Scholar of the Eastern Region. Harlan champions clinical members, and he champions ACPE. He is a gift, he is a treasure, he's a bearded, warm, exuberant person who we are proud to present to you as a 2011 recipient of the ACPE Distinguished Service Award.
We are also very happy that he has with him tonight his wife Ellen, daughter Julia, and her friend Mike from Seattle, and his daughter Stephanie.
Little Cassiana a couple weeks ago at church. She's 3 years old. I came out with my robe on, walking through the congregation early, talking to the kids. She whispered to her mama, "There goes Jesus." I said to myself, I don't think so. Then I think of Fred Olbert, a pulpiteer when I was in seminary. I drove to Grand Rapids for 3 years in a row and did the liturgy in a church. They were on the radio and they needed to time their prayers down to the last second. I had a little radio work, so I did that. New pastor came there, an older man, and the first Sunday he was rolling up. He put on his academic garb, and he put on his stoles, and he looked in the mirror and he said, "Ratmeyer, more harness here than there is horse." I wonder why those two stories came to me tonight. I'm going to do the usual things because they are all true. My beloved wife, Ellen, life has been absolutely wonderful, and every day has been a gift since you came into my life. And what I do and your support and love of it and understanding of it is beyond words, and I'm so grateful. I love you. My daughters are here tonight, Stephanie and Julia, and Mike, Julia's friend. Kind of wonder what they're thinking. I remember when they were in high school and they needed to go shopping for clothing or some items, and they would say, "Now you walk way back of us, or way in front of us, don't pretend you know us. And then when we want something, we'll motion, you can pull over." So what they're thinking tonight, I can only guess. I didn't see them rolling their eyes like they used to when they were teenagers. And my dear grandchildren. I'm missing Bob and Phyllis Carlson and Bob and Dee Eads, and I mentioned their spouses as well because when I was in supervisory training and in CPE, they opened their houses. This was not going through a little academic course somewhere. It was entering into a community with spouses, a community in their homes, a community traveling. It was, as Parker Palmer says, it was going into a vocation, a holy calling. It was much deeper than just that. I want to thank Claudia Meyer, who works at Albany Medical Center, is a colleague of mine and adds enormously to the program and to the work we do. To my RCA colleagues that I meet about once a year for a few days, and that is indeed a holy process as well. And finally, with a gracious introduction, and to the Eastern region, who had either the wisdom or the folly, what is it, that led them to nominate me, and I'm deeply moved. Sally called me, and the one price I had to pay for this, as I understand it, was that there had to be a poem. And so, even though the lights are a little shaky here, I will read the poem. A late autumn, cold, wet Saturday afternoon, little did I expect the silence would be broken so soon. cozied up in the kitchen reading about sacrifice by René Girard, looking out at great species of birds feeding in the yard. But the phone call's class jarred me out of this scene so tranquil. Who is this, and what are they trying to sell? Then a voice called out, Harlan, sounding only slightly less lovely than the voice of God. With the excitement, reverence, and tone that could only be Sally Schwab. She was saying confusing things, nearly caused me to faint. Something about going to Salt Lake City and turning me into a Latter-day Saint. Pretty scary. That conversation has turned my life around. Who is watching me all the time? Who's listening? Are those cameras stuck there in the ground? I receive this with great gratitude and feel most humbled, knowing how many of you in this beloved organization do far more. You do above average work. You are Garrel's and Keeler's family, people who are all above average. I want to say just a couple things. I promised to be very brief, and people were betting that I wouldn't, but I think they'll lose that bet. Just a few brief reflections. You've seen the garden, and the first thing is I've had the gift of a joyful work. Hafiz, the Sufi poet, said, last night God posted on the tavern wall a difficult saying for all of love's inmates. If your heart cannot find a joyful work, the jaws of this world will grab hold of your sweet ass. Sounds like you know what I'm talking about. Well, I must say, when I prance over the bridge from the parking lot into Albany Med most mornings, I'm singing, I'm whistling, I'm saying to people who are complaining about the weather, gosh, it really is snowing this morning, but at least it's cold and the wind is blowing. And in the summer, people will complain about the heat, but all I say is, well, it is very hot, but thank goodness at least it's humid. So they do have a room waiting for me on E2.
The psychiatric ward.
And then a framework for work, a framework for your work. I think for me, that's one of the things that I've done enjoy, and ACPE gave it to me in Indianapolis when Morris LeSean spoke, and he's written a book called The Mechanic and the Gardener. And I understand, and I tell my students, it's about gardening. We're in a society that wants to fix everything, quick fixes. Gardeners have to look first to see where to plant, and what to plant, and how to grow, and how to nurture. It's not about fixing, it's not about mechanicking. Some hot dog student a few years ago found in the paper, after about 6 months with me, found in the paper this article by a local pastor, worked as a mechanic and I know how to fix people, and they cut it out, they magnified it, and they put it on my door. I think they got the point, I think they were just rubbing it in. It's important to have something of a framework. And I have a faith community. I'm blessed to be in my own congregation on Sunday mornings. It's sort of like you get all wound up there and they spin you off to the hospital like those wrestlers bouncing from one rim rope to the other that bounce back and forth between hospital and church, and each sustains me in a different way. I think I'm blessed with good rapport with administration. One of the advantages of having this happen to me is that somebody asked the administration of our hospital to comment on my work. I was overwhelmed by what they said, and it was very kind, and I almost went in and asked for a raise after that. Another thing I think is important is a sense of justice. The Healthcare Manifesto. We're in a world where insurance companies make sinful amounts of money off of the backs of the poor, where probably most of us in this room have some investments in healthcare industry. John Calvin, out of my tradition as stodgy old Calvinist, said, it's immoral to take any interest on money you loan for the poor and for the sick. but we're just ruthlessly doing that. Social justice, I think, needs to be part of pastoral care. Howard Kleinbell, in a book called Personal Growth and Social Change, and I took a course with him when I was on the West Coast, said that we love to do the pastoral care work, the kind of by the bedside stuff, the feel-good stuff for us. You were so kind. How do you work with these dying people, etc., etc. All meaningful stuff, all meaningful. But he said we're like people who love to go and put out fires, but we hate to confront the arsonist who's setting them down the block. And I think that's part of what we all live in hospitals where these economic issues are incredibly strong and powerful. I hope we all have the courage to speak to those, and once in a while make our administrators very nervous. And finally, I think I've been blessed through CPE, Carlson and Eads let me have my way, to stumble and fall and be embarrassed sometimes, but also to grow out and be who I am and to find my own way, not to be a rubber stamp of something else. I drive to Albany Medical Center every day, thinking about my students, thinking about the staff, thinking about what I do. But as I approach the building, coming down the road in my Mini Cooper, I approach the building and I say, oh God, this is a big place. Help me today to say what I need to say. Help me to say it kindly, but to say it, and not be afraid whether I have a job tonight or not. I've had that mantra since I started CPE, most everywhere I've gone. So protective defense for me, I need it so I can stay strong during the day, or sort of strong, to say those things. And finally, I would say Hafiz, again, my friend, the Sufi poet, said, what is the difference between your perception of God and that of a saint? The saint knows that life is a complex chess game with the beloved, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that all you can do is fall over and put your arms out and laugh and say, I surrender, I surrender. Whereas you, my dear people, still think you have 1,000 serious moves left. I am deeply grateful for this recognition, and I believe that what it says is the truth and the beauty that we talk about often comes out of the ordinary, and there's nobody more ordinary than I am. That means that we have a whole community of people with brilliance and loveliness and miracle going out from Salt Lake City all over this country. I'm honored to be one of you. Thank you so much.
I'd like to welcome Greg Stoddard to the podium. Greg is the president of the Foundation for Clinical Pastoral Education.
Thank you, Sally, and greetings, everyone. I have a very brief part of this program this evening, and that is to invite you to honor and to celebrate some very special people who are in our midst this evening. The Foundation for Clinical Pastoral Education, your foundation, is just past its 3rd birthday.